Good evening. We are live on YouTube, but give it just a moment as we bring in my Facebook page, Scott Kennedy Sports on Facebook. And this is our initial Bears pod. It's going, and it's up and running now. Welcome in, everybody. This is the first edition of our Bears podcast, which we are probably just going to call Bears Pod. Nice and easy. I am Scott Kennedy. I will be your co-host tonight. But as we move forward, this is going to a Chicago Bears guy. Over on this side, his name's Parker Hurley, who covers the Chicago Bears. And I've had a lot of good luck with Chicago Bears fans on my YouTube fans. It's how we found Parker. Parker found me. He says, hey, what do you think about doing a Bears pod? I'm like, I'm game. Let's do it. So, Parker, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm excited, man. I'm ready to do this Bears podcast. We got the number one pick. We got $100 million. I was just thinking, all eyes shifted. Last week was the Eagles week. All of a sudden, the eyes start shifting to the Chicago Bears. And, before you know it, all eyes are on the Chicago Bears, and they're the team with the center of attention right now.
Well, Parker, tell us a little bit about yourself. I'm Scott Kennedy. For those of you who are joining us, on my channels, the YouTube algorithms might have found you, and you might not know who I am. I live in Atlanta. I was former director of scouting for Scout.com. I've done NFL draft and college football recruiting for a long, long time. I care more about the general process, which is how I started talking about the Chicago Bears a little bit, because this is going to be a really exciting time if you are interested in team building. Parker, give us your credentials. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm from the Pittsburgh area, so not necessarily local to Chicago, but I think that gives me an advantage where, I can see the team from a kind of a bigger picture point of view, where I'm not that fan focused sort of, grew up with the 85 Bears sort of view. So been covering the team since about the 2016 season. Right after they drafted Mitch Trubisky is really when I started it. So this will be my 6th or 7th off season covering the Chicago Bears. And from the number 2 pick with Mitch Trubisky to the number 1 pick now, it's gone, almost a full circle from Trubisky to Justin Fields all the way back to number 1. I've seen a lot already in this just 6 or 7 years with the Chicago Bears.
Be careful. You're going to sound like an old guy like me when you start talking about, I've been doing this for 10 years. It probably felt like 100. See, I was 12 years old with the 85 Bears, so they left a big impression on an impressionable 12-year-old. So I was probably 13 when they won the Super Bowl. Usually do that in 86, January, when they still played games in January of 86. So I was 13. They left an impression on me, the Chicago Bears. That's for sure. And so is Justin Fields. 3 topics we want to get into tonight. We're going to be with you all about 30 minutes. And I see some folks coming in. Hop in the chat. Say hello. As this thing opens up and the notifications start reading more people, our numbers start to grow. So hop in the chat. Say hello. If you're watching this after the fact, leave a comment. Parker and I will come in and we'll answer the comments. If you've got questions, anything like that, we would love to interact. We're doing this live so we can interact with you. Yes, we will have a podcast as well, but we do it live because we enjoy the fan interaction. So jump on in and say hello. 3 topics we want to get to tonight. 1, what could the Bears get in a trade down? 2, there seems to be a lot more smoke. I don't know that I believe it any more than usual, but a lot more smoke around the possibility of drafting Bryce Young and trading Justin Fields instead. And 3, if you do move down a little bit, who would you rather have, Jalen Carter or Will Anderson? And then somebody else's first round pick, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to hit on all those 3. And the call to action has worked. KB82, that's Kenny Booker. He says, should the Bears draft with their number 1 overall pick or trade for a boatload of picks since there are some legit QBs in this year's draft? Let's just start there.
Right.
What do you think as far as if they stay at number 1, they almost have to take a quarterback, right? And I don't know if that's where I want to start. Here's my thoughts on this now that I've done a full circle of babble talk here. If Justin Fields was in this draft, he'd be my number 1 pick. I think the Bears would be insane to trade away Justin Fields right now for the chance to take one of the other quarterbacks. And I think this is all just smoke right now in order to build up more interest, so to speak, for that number 1 overall pick, or to get someone to send you a stupid offer for Justin Fields.
Right. Yep. No, I agree completely with that opinion. And I think that you could very easily argue that Justin Fields would be the number 1 overall pick in this draft. So it is, you have something that's established. You have him not, people say, okay, you get 2 extra years of the rookie salary contract if you draft someone this year versus Justin Fields. But what you lose is Justin Fields just had 1 year with Luke Getsy, the offensive coordinator, and you have that experience. So that advantage, it turns into a wash. And, like you said, okay, him versus Bryce Young, the physical differences you can argue about, this, that, and the other, pocket presence, throwing mechanics, whatever. The physical differences, you can't deny that. Okay, CJ Stroud, another Ohio State quarterback, is Ohio, do you kind of just hit the reset button if you're the Chicago Bears there? So you look at it and say, like the comments said, if there's a boatload of draft picks there, or if you could try and, dangle it out there and potentially get, even if it is just a pick or 2, because who knows how low you could move down. Maybe you just move down a couple of spots. I think you're in a position where you say Justin Fields showed enough. The year with the offensive coordinator, and really what happened was the first 6 games, it was a disaster. Then 7 through 14, it was great because the timing with the offensive coordinator, that rookie's going to need that time again to already break that ice.
Right.
I think you have to roll with Justin Fields.
See, and that's the thing, you talk about, another year of cost control, but shoot, by the time you get a rookie up to speed, it's going to be another year or 2 anyway. And you could argue that the Bears aren't a year away from being, contenders. So let's go ahead and reset the clock. Not for me, man. I would just as soon trade down from that pick, keep Justin Fields, and pick up another number 1. If I should be able to pick up at least somebody's 2024. Yeah, I'm getting my years. They're all running together. 2024 number 1 pick.
Right.
And something else, because there's a concern. And in one of the comments on YouTube, someone when I was talking about their Bears before, someone said, you don't want to have too many rookies in one class. I'm like, I agree with that. I don't want to have too many young guys, especially when this draft is considered a weaker draft through 1 through 32, maybe farther. Okay, well, give me that 2025 pick. 2024 pick. I'll take that number 1 pick for sure. So I absolutely think the Bears should trade down. And I've said they want to trade back as many spots as long as one of Jalen Carter or Will Anderson is available. And when one of those guys, when there's only one of them left, that's the spot I want to be in. Because there's 2 premier prospects in this class. This isn't the 2021 draft class. It's just not, where you could go 10, 12 deep on difference makers.
Mm-hmm.
There's 2. There's 2 big-time guys in Jalen Carter and Will Anderson. If you're the Bears, you want to come out with one of those 2 guys.
For sure. Yep. And the thing that when you look at the draft board, you say, in terms of quick trade candidates, okay, there's number 2, the Houston Texans, number 4, the Indianapolis Colts. If you're the Bears, and this is a dream scenario, is, okay, the Indianapolis Colts want to jump the Houston Texans. These are division rivals. They potentially know what each other are doing, things of that nature. If you just slide back to 4, and maybe you do get that, first from the Indianapolis Colts the year from next year, you slide back to 4, the Indianapolis Colts are going quarterback. You still assume the Houston Texans would potentially go quarterback. And then you sit there at 4 and you say, okay, Arizona surely will take one of Will Anderson or, Jalen Carter. And you're kind of like that guy at the fantasy football draft, when you have the 12th pick, and okay, whoever slides to me, I'm just going to take, the best option available left. And to pick up, maybe you take Jalen Carter at number 1 overall. If you're in a bad situation, stuck, you trade back to 4, pick something up, and then you still get Jalen Carter at the very end of it at the 4th overall pick. I mean, talk about a dream scenario. It doesn't get any better than that. And the fact that it's at least plausible, because the Colts need a quarterback and the Texans need a quarterback, and they can create that bidding war. The fact that it's plausible, you got to be excited for the Chicago Bears.
I follow the Colts fairly closely, and basically everybody on earth is putting them in the number 1 spot. They're saying, okay, the Colts are going to want to trade up. Jim Irsay, their owner, at Shane Steichen's introductory press conference, says that Alabama guy looks pretty good.
Right.
Well, you want that Alabama guy, and if you want to make sure you're going to get him, you're going to have to move up to number 1.
Right.
To make sure you're going to get him. Otherwise, someone else is. And then Houston's going to stay there and take one or the other. Maybe 3.
And that's your division rival.
They're going to do that. And but I think the 4 spot would be perfect, because 2 quarterbacks, maybe 3, and then you can take either one of those guys, and you should be able to pick up at least another first-round pick from the Colts, at least.
Right.
I went Amir 58 Amir coming in off YouTube saying, "Hey guys, hello sir,
Hello.
thank you for joining us."
Yeah.
888 Dr. Pepper, one of our regulars, welcome in, welcome in. He said, "I would think with the Bears salary cap situation, and if you get really good trade for that first, you can dramatically improve your team and free agents and high draft picks."
Yep.
Well, dramatically improve should happen with just the free agency, for goodness sakes. This was a poor team. You didn't end up with the number one overall pick because you were good, and you didn't end up with $100 million in available cap space because you had a bunch of well-paid, good players. So the team needs a big infusion of talent. The number one pick, and if you've already got the quarterback taken care of, and you can trade down, the only way this could have been any better is if you had the number one pick next year, when it seems like some of those guys are a little better, everybody was talking about CJ Stroud and Bryce Young being the number one guy last year, and here they are.
When you get to the point, it's a lot iffier than, it's very easy to project what, like you said, Caleb Williams could be, but we'll see how he does next season, and we all think he'll do completely fine, but yeah, we will see how that goes next season.
So, and JJ comes in, he says, "I would trade out, stick with Fields and whatever you can get for the pick." Yeah. It's not like we're talking, the Fields is being mentioned as a budding superstar, not just we'll see what we got. He seems to be okay, but Justin Fields is being considered a budding superstar right now. Run through the wide receiver options that he's had as a Chicago Bears quarterback and the weapons he's had, and have they been good enough? Is the defense the whole team needs help for sure.
Right.
The defense needs help. But you got to start supporting your franchise quarterback here pretty soon, don't you?
Right. And I mean, the reality is his first year, he's with Matt Nagy learning one offense. His second year, he's with Luke Getsy and, Matt Eberflus learning a completely different offense. And like I said, you could see dramatic difference from weeks 1 through 6, weeks 7 through 14, a dramatic shift in terms of how much better he got from week 7 on. So it has something to do with timing, patience, buying into these things. And okay, he's doing a lot of it with his legs, but you saw enough glimpses and there's enough physical talent with his arm that you say, once he gets comfortable, once he understands the offense, like you said, he's not throwing to, Equanimous St. Brown, basically Amon-Ra's, unknown brother. Once he's throwing to the unknown brother of the group, and, you actually get him somebody, you could start to see things. And like you kind of said, okay, this isn't the year where, if this is Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields as the number one pick, I think it's a different conversation. If it's Joe Burrow and Justin Fields, it's a different conversation. If it's Andrew Luck and Justin Fields, it's a different conversation. It's just not that generational. I think those are the three in the past decade, or, a little over a decade, maybe with Luck. Those are kind of the three where you said they're going number one. It's obvious they're going number one. Even if you had a guy like Fields, maybe you're debating it, but Bryce Young just isn't Joe Burrow. He just isn't necessarily that. So that's where
I think it's close. Joe Burrow, I think there were some questions coming out. He's answered those questions, but there were some questions going out. But for me, the guys that were the no doubters of when you were mentioned was Trevor Lawrence.
Right.
As much as I like Justin Fields, and I see 888 Dr. Pepper's comment in here, I'm going to hit that one too. Trevor Lawrence for me was a clear number one, and I wanted Justin Fields number two. Without a doubt. And 888 coming in here, he says, "I was with you when you wanted the Falcons to take Fields over Pitts at number 4 overall." And I'll go to my grave on that one, saying that, yes, the Falcons should have taken Justin Fields. I actually wanted them to trade down and get a boatload of picks, but San Francisco ruined that by going to the number 3 spot. But Zach Wilson, Justin Fields never should have been there. He should have been the Jets pick at number 2.
Correct.
And this goes back long enough that we can find me saying that. If you don't believe me, this isn't just hindsight. When I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But this one, and I'm not saying Justin Fields is going to be a superstar, but I was absolutely saying Justin Fields should have been the number 2 overall pick,
right,
in this draft. So, yep, appreciate when y'all remember this. Some of the stuff I say. Kevin Mapp coming in on Facebook. He says, "What's up, guys? What's up, Kevin? Appreciate you being here, and hit that like button. I see you in here. I know you can do it." Kevin is one of our great contributors to the chat, so looking forward to answer the questions. And I cover a bunch of different teams, but one of the teams I cover on a regular basis is the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons and Chicago Bears are going to have a lot in common over the course of this this next cycle with free agency, because they've got the two with the most money. and the biggest holes to fill. So the Bears and the Falcons are going to go head to head on a lot of guys.
Yep.
Duron Payne is someone who has come up on both sides of the coin with the Atlanta Falcons and Chicago Bears. Parker, how do you think Duron Payne would fit in with the Chicago Bears right now?
I think it's a dream. I really, it's almost a perfect scenario. And when you look at where Matt Eberflus came from with the Indianapolis Colts, one of the big swings that he took to take their kind of defense a step further was trading a first-round pick for DeForest Buckner. That similar role where, you get that pass rush from that 3 technique, and Eberflus likes building it from that middle and then kind of outwards. And I think it would be a very similar, I think he would draw comparisons to, when I took that swing for Buckner, the Colts defense turned around. And when I took that swing for Duron Payne, the Chicago Bears defense turned around. I think he would view it in a similar light. And the first thing the Bears tried to do last offseason was sign Larry Ogunjobi. He failed a physical. It didn't work out. Because Eberflus, he just loves that fit of that 3 technique who can penetrate and get upfield. So the scheme fit is, it is perfect. And the real question is, is Washington going to let him out the door? Because Chicago's, like you said, it's going to turn into a bidding war between them and the Falcons with the money that they could offer.
Yeah, he'd be a nice person to sit next to Grady Jarrett also in a 4-3 if that's what you wanted to do. Get Grady Jarrett back inside. He's good as a 3-4 just because he's Grady Jarrett, but he's much better as a defensive tackle on a 4-3. KB82, that's Kenny Booker, has a question. He says, what linebacker in this year's draft class can replace Roquan Smith? Now, I don't know that there is a replacement for Roquan Smith, but, you might want to hit free agency for that one. Looking at some of the big boards out there, Trenton Simpson, Clemson, Drew Sanders, Arkansas, Noah Sewell out of Oregon. And then you start getting into, day 2, day 3 guys. But the top two seem to be Trenton Simpson and Drew Sanders out of Clemson and Arkansas. But, Roquan got a good deal for him. The Bears made, a move they needed to make. Roquan went to the Ravens and got a good contract. So I think that was a good move for everybody involved.
Right. And they have the cap space to where, and really one of the more interesting facets from recently was that the Bears actually had their linebackers coach, Dave Borgonzi, interviewed for the Cardinals defensive coordinator job, which you kind of think the number 1 overall pick linebackers coach is, interviewing for a promotion. That doesn't happen often. But I think the one thing they saw is after the Bears traded Roquan Smith, they had UDFA Jack Sanborn and, Nicholas Morrow, kind of just a couple guys. And I think you saw Dave Borgonzi and you said, he's actually doing a really good job with what he has. And going back to, he came from the Colts with Eberflus. So Darius Leonard was obviously, with Dave Borgonzi as the linebackers coach.
You call him Shaq now.
Correct. You're right.
Now I'm confused.
Shaq Darius Leonard is Shaq Leonard. You're right.
Now. Yeah, it's Shaq now. Okay.
You're right. That's
like, wait a minute. I haven't thought about it in a while. I forgot which came first, the Darius or the Shaq.
You're absolutely right. He's Shaq now. But then the interesting one is that Bobby Okereke will be a free agent this offseason. And so he has a connection with Dave Borgonzi. So like you said, maybe they go the draft route. Maybe they look to a guy like Bobby Okereke and say, hey, you got familiarity. We drafted you, back when you were with the Colts. And, now maybe you're a fit. Maybe, hey, him and Jack Sanborn with a good linebackers coach, maybe that's what they do.
Some of the guys are going to be free agents. Someone near and dear to the Atlanta Falcons' heart, Deion Jones. Debo is going to be a free agent. He was on a $14 million contract. He'll be lucky to see 10% of that on his next deal.
His stay with the Browns was short and not fun for him.
He might get $2 or $3 million on that. Levante David's 33 years old. Devin Bush is still just 25.
I know. It had an awful career in Pittsburgh, but the upside of a former top 10 pick is still there.
Could be interesting on him with going that direction. Denzel Perryman, he's 31. Tremaine Edmonds, out of Buffalo, is just 25 years old. So some of the guys that you're going to be shopping for. And Kenny says Alex Singleton had a breakout season last year. He played for the Denver Broncos. I don't think so. I wouldn't consider it a breakout season. He had more tackles than he has, but he's a 3 or 4 straight 100 tackle a year guy. I'd have to look it up real quick, but I think that's his 3rd straight year with at least 100 tackles. So he is who he is. He makes a bunch of tackles, and it's almost like that stat doesn't really matter anymore. It sounds strange to say. It's like one of those out of context things, like tackles don't matter. What? Right. What do you mean they don't matter? if you're playing in a scheme and you should rack up high numbers of tackles. Deion Jones, Foye Oluokun for the Falcons had led the NFL in tackles in 2021 and had a PFF grade of like 47.
Mm-hmm.
So because he wasn't necessarily making a ton of plays. Now I disagreed with that one, but still, there should be plenty of guys to come in for Roquan Smith. Let's see here. Moving to our third topic on this, I mentioned at the top of the show, you want to trade back if you're the Chicago Bears until either Will Anderson, edge from Alabama, or defensive line, interior lineman Jalen Carter is available. Which would you prefer and why for the Chicago Bears?
Well, I think in terms of talent, I think you could argue kind of both ways. And I think there's potential similarities in this and that. But like we kind of just talked about, if you think the talents are similar, and I kind of do, I think if you're the Chicago Bears, you have to prefer the fit with Matt Eberflus, who, like I said, DeForest Buckner, Larry Ogunjobi, Duron Payne. I think Jalen Carter, in terms of the Chicago Bears defense, would be the best fit. And you could really see him, filling that role just like DeForest Buckner did, penetrating upfield, pushing the pocket from the center. And then similar to Eberflus's defense, he kind of has his edges, he pushed the pocket into the edges. So you don't need necessarily as much value in your edges. But if you get that push from the center and you look at Will Anderson and you say, hey, he's, like you said, a generational prospect. He's obviously the top two in terms of the non-quarterbacks. But when you look at him, a little undersized, some of the way
I don't throw around the word generational very easily.
That's fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, because I would say the same thing that, he's a very good prospect. And like you said, a top 10 pick probably every single year. But in terms of the number one pick, when you say a little undersized, pretty good against the run, but a lot of his run defenses are, similar to that, they say with the Reddick play, how do you leave a tight end on one of those edge rushers, and kind of, and that's what Will Anderson is great on. He plows over the tight end and he can chase. He's a run and chase player and he's very fast and he runs with power and aggression and he's very fast, but you don't necessarily see the bend. You don't see, the consistent winning. He wins on stunts a lot, things of that nature that, like I said, when you look at the Matt Eberflus defense, you say, if he's the best player available, you obviously take him. If you're looking at who fits the Matt Eberflus defense, I think it's pretty clearly Jalen Carter.
Well, and you talk about similar talent. Now, I'll say similar, but for me, there is a clear winner as far as if I'm looking at a Madden rating, one of them's got 4 or 5 points higher, and that's Jalen Carter.
Yeah.
I think the only reason it's a discussion is because edge is typically more valuable than an interior lineman, okay? Again, Jalen Carter has the potential to be a dominant defensive tackle. I don't think there's nearly as many questions about him as there are about Will Anderson. Like you mentioned, okay, he's only 230 pounds. He can play at 250 and stuff, but that limits a little bit to what he can do. He's super fast. Is his ceiling a guy like Von Miller? Okay, well, Von Miller's going in the Hall of Fame. I'll take that one right now. Maybe a little bit more length, but Jalen Carter to me is as good as an interior line prospect as I can remember in years. So I think the only reason it's a discussion is because it'd be like saying, okay, well, he's the best center prospect. Okay, well, the best center prospect's probably going to go around 15. But he is the better talent. It's just he's at a position that isn't quite on the same level on value, as far as depth goes. Now, you get an Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald's making more money than any edge, and a top 3 or 4 guy. But those guys they're super rare, which to me, I would go Jalen Carter over Will Anderson right now. And I still like the idea of building the spine of your defense. We're talking about the Chicago Bears. I grew up Mike Singletary. Okay. Coming after that, we're talking, Brian Urlacher. Okay. If I can go Jalen Carter and then build through the back, I got my piece right in the middle in the defensive line.
Yep.
That's a pretty good starting point for a rebuild in Chicago.
Yeah. And yeah, like we had someone ask, who replaces Roquan Smith. One of the biggest things is if you have a good defensive line, it's not just plug and play, just throw somebody back there. But when you have a good defensive line, it makes life so much easier for maybe you do, like I said, maybe you trust Jack Sanborn to take a step and maybe you add, a cheaper free agent and you say, because we have this lock solid defensive line and because we have a stout guy and we're not, blockers aren't just running completely free at you. maybe we could, feel a lot more confident about that. So even in that regard, I think Jalen Carter has the ripple effect of he may make your linebackers better, whereas Will Anderson on that edge, like I said, you may have to scheme the other players around because of his skill set is kind of, so particular.
Yeah, and then you find him, we mentioned Duron Payne. Duron Payne and Jalen Carter is an infusion of talent into the Chicago Bears defensive line. Yes, please.
Right. You talk about the Bash brothers,
That would work out nicely. Joshua Finland coming in from Tampa Bay, Florida. He says trade Justin Fields to Tampa would be the best option. No, I'm just teasing Joshua.
You're gonna say from Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I'm just teasing about the from Tampa Bay. He might be a Chicago Bears fan. I would think that the Tampa Bay is in the market for a quarterback. And I actually thought one of the names I heard for Tampa Bay that makes a lot of sense is Trey Lance.
Right.
If the San Francisco 49ers want to stick with Purdy and they feel good about his recovery from his injury, that Trey Lance might make a lot of sense. Now, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are sitting with 19-51 in this year's draft class. There's no saying they'll be as good next year. I mean, I feel like they're due a step back. So if I'm sitting there if I'm trading Justin Fields, I want your 19. I probably want your 51, and I want your 2024 number 1 at least.
Yep.
Just to talk. Now, again, I'll say it right now. I don't think the Chicago Bears are going to trade Justin Fields.
If you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, are you sitting there saying, like you said, it's going to take a future first to get Justin Fields? If you're the Buccaneers, are you sitting there saying, maybe we just throw whoever at quarterback and we're better off with the first overall pick? Like you said, maybe if it is, whether it's May or Caleb Williams or however it shakes out, are the Bucs better off, not trading that pick because that pick would be the first overall pick instead of trading that pick? And then all of a sudden they lost, like you said, maybe that's a top 5 pick they're losing, or maybe that's their future quarterback that they just traded away.
And that's the thing. If you don't think you're even a year away, if you think, okay, it's going to be lean this year, if 2023, if I'm looking at my team and going, okay, we're in a bad cap situation, our contracts are bad, we're not going to be very good this year, you are not getting my 2024.
Right.
You're just not. You're not getting that first round pick. Now,
right.
Why do the Colts make such why would the Colts do that? Because the Colts should be significantly better in 2023 than they were 2022.
Their roster is much more in place. Yeah.
Yeah. They're not necessarily a quarterback away, but they're a hell of a lot closer. That if they can get their franchise guy, even if he's a tick below a Drake May or a Caleb Williams, and you can get him this year, so be it. And they're in solid room with the salary cap as well. And Kevin agrees with us. Chicago is not trading Fields. His name has come up in Atlanta again. I'm like, if you morons, and this would be so Atlanta, pass on him at 4 and then trade 2 number 1s to get him later. I'm like, that something like that kind of happened a long time ago with Jeff George. The Falcons traded out of the number 1 spot. The number 1 pick ended up being Jeff George, and then they ended up getting Jeff George later on, but they didn't spend a number 1 overall to get him. But no, I agree with you, Kevin. Chicago is not trading Justin Fields. So
I agree.
Any last thoughts before we get out of here? We're at about 30 minutes. We'll probably call it a night for our very first Bears pod with Parker Hurley. So any final thoughts before we get moving?
No, I thought it went well. I thought we got some great comments to really kind of go off of and kind of keep this thing rolling. Really excited for the next podcast to kind of keep building this listenership, and already kind of brewing up some, some topics for the next podcast just based off of this podcast. So this will be really good.
Yeah, we'll start on a regular schedule starting next week. We'll probably go one more time with me and Parker, and then Parker will start taking it over for sure. Let me hit on Andy's question real quick as he comes in. He says, does Fields have a better shot at becoming a more dynamic pocket passer than Russell Wilson? I would say tools wise, probably yes. I mean, he's taller, and he's got a stronger arm. He's got a better arm. Russell Wilson's got a great arm. Don't get me wrong, but Justin Fields' arm is next level. I mean, it's really, really good. The question of him, and it's hard to get a good read on him, is how well does he see the field at all times? And, how well does he go through his progressions? But he's been playing behind a patchwork offensive line at best without really very good wide receivers or weapons to go through.
Right.
How can that be when you're talking about you don't have much of a defense either? Well, that's how you end up with the number 1 overall pick and $100 million in cap space. So now it's
Yep.
time for the rebuild to happen, and they need to get him some protection. They need to get him some weapons while building a defense. Sounds easy.
Yep.
That's why it's going to be so much fun on the Bears pod this year with all that money and the high draft picks, Parker.
Yep. And yeah, just to kind of talk about the versus Russell Wilson, I think, like you kind of said, there's a lot of the upside is there. And I think a situation that you can have is similar to Russell Wilson, where, everybody said, oh, let Russ cook, let Russ cook. I think the perfect situation for Russ is when you run the football and you take your shots here and there. And I think Seattle kind of figured that out and had him in a really nice situation when you kind of look back on it and say, well, they kind of got the most out of him, or they kind of put him in a situation where he was cooking. So I think if you put Justin Fields in that situation where you're running the football, you're sucking the people in, and then you take those deep shots and things of that nature, then yeah, I think you start getting him similar to Russell Wilson in terms of, dropping those bombs on people. I think you could absolutely see that.
All right, Parker, before we get out of
here. Another
here.
question. Yeah, there we go.
Before we get out of here from 888 Dr. Pepper, what do you think? Let's take quarterbacks out of this.
Right.
And say what is the Bears' biggest need, and will they find a number 1? So I'm going to give you the last 5 drafts. Who do you pick? Who would fit your team the best? Who's your biggest? That would be, to me, your biggest need. I would take, I don't know, Aiden Hutchinson, whatever. Who would be your number 1 pick? Justin Jefferson. That might be the answer right there. I might have just stolen it.
I was going to say, I don't, because like with the wide receiver thing, I think to kind of answer that question first, I guess, I don't know if they're going to add a number 1, because with Chase Claypool and Darnell Mooney, they almost have 2 number 2s. And it's almost like, in my opinion, they're probably just going to be able to add another number 2 and, kind of have 3 number 2s across the board and kind of feel necessarily okay about that. If they add someone like, Justin Jefferson, how dynamic would that be? But I think it goes back to, like we kind of said, as much as you want to add offense and as much as you want to help Justin Fields, their number 1 need is their defense was pathetic last season in terms of the run, in terms of really getting after the pass or defending the pass, anything, you name it. So I still go back to the 3 technique, the defensive line, someone that could get some sort of rush. So, maybe not, Aaron Donald, but if you could get an Aaron Donald or, some sort of, like I said, like a Cam Hayward type would even just be, that would just be awesome, because that would be such an upgrade. I think that the defensive line is probably the bigger need than wide receiver, because I think wide receiver, not necessarily that you patch it, but I think that you can, like I said, maybe a number 2 and you have 3 number 2s across the board isn't the worst thing in the world, versus you have nothing on the defensive line right now. There's just nothing to speak home about.
Yeah, hitting that defensive line's a big one. And I don't know that they're going to be able to, I don't know that there's a number 1 available, to be honest with you. The free agency class doesn't look great, and the draft class doesn't look great.
No.
So there's going to be some reaches on that. KB82 says, don't forget to hit those thumbs up. Absolutely. And Dr. Van Nostrand coming in. Welcome in, Doc. He says, Fields can't throw accurately at all. He's an amazing runner, though. Yet he left Ohio State with a 70% completion percentage.
Right.
Not bad. You have to be able to at least hit the water falling out of a boat if you can get 70%. I think he's a better thrower than he was getting credit for. Again, he would have been my number 2 overall pick behind Trevor Lawrence, and he would be my number 1 pick in this draft class. So therefore, unless someone wants to send you 3 number 1s for him, you don't trade Justin Fields. You're keeping Justin Fields, and you're trying to come down a spot and pick up another number 1.
I think if anything, you could maybe knock his decision-making, which sometimes leads to the accuracy, because maybe he is a little slow, or maybe he does, wait that extra second when he should have threw it a second quicker and things like that. And the accuracy looks worse. But I think like when you get him playing on time and when you get him playing in a system, I don't think the accuracy is too bad of an issue. And I think in terms of deep field accuracy, I don't think it gets much better. You could argue about, the middle. And like I said, the middle is the timing routes and the things of, the crossing routes. You could argue about that. I agree. But that deep field accuracy, you can't touch.
And I'm not going to condemn him too much, because like I just said, he's playing behind a patchwork offensive line and number 2 receivers.
And he's trying to be a hero and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, he's pressing a little bit. Mike Lehrer coming in, then we're going to get out of here. He says, Eagles had to be stacked and Hurts in an MVP or just to make the Super Bowl. It's all talent driven now. It's always been talent driven, Mike. There's a phrase that goes a long way back that says it's not the X's and O's, it's the Jimmies and the Joes. Football, more than any other sport, is a bigger, faster, stronger. It's an athlete's game. You don't hear about guys saying, oh, yeah, I picked up shortstop while I was my junior year in college. I'd never played before, and now I'm starting shortstop for the New York Yankees. That doesn't happen. That happens in football. Oh, I was a power forward at Ohio for the Ohio Bobcats. It wasn't working out, so I decided to go out for football. And now I'm in the NFL.
Yeah.
It's an athlete's game. It's always been an athlete's game. It will always be an athlete's game. So stacking those rosters is certainly important. Everybody, I want to say thank you for being here. I'm Scott Kennedy. That's Parker Hurley over here on this side. This is the Bears Pod, and this is our first episode. So thank you so much for joining us. Keep an eye, hit that like and notification so you know when we're going to be back. Hit up any questions or comments you have on YouTube because we will follow up and make sure that those get answered, because Parker's going to take over this and he's going to have the Bears Pod, brand new, Parker Hurley. So keep an eye on us. We look forward to seeing you again, and everybody, thanks for being here.